Hi, my name's Karen Deford. I work for Cynthia's of Bend, and I'm actually a service technician, but I also host the Embroidery Club and some sewing classes and some project classes. I'm going to show you in this video how you can embroider a bucket bag. An inexpensive bucket bag that's pleather is my choice to embroider on. So today we're going to turn the bag inside out, because as you can see, the opening of this bag is limited. Now I could use a 10 needle machine, but then I would be restricted by the movement going back and forth. So this would even work on a 10 needle machine, and I'm going to show you though on how you can do it on a combination embroidery and sewing machine. So this is a brother, and it's my choice to show you to do it on this because I think this is probably the sewing and embroidery machine is more common in use. So we're going to turn this bag inside out to stitch it. This has a boxed bottom. We're going to turn it inside out. And the beauty in this bag is that it does have an interior pocket, but as you can see, it isn't sewn to the bag. It has a magnetic close, but I am going to choose to do the embroidery on this side of the bag. So the first thing and the first step in any embroidery that you're doing where your space is limited, the first thing you're going to do is change out the bobbin. You might be wondering why I would say change out the bobbin, and that's because you don't want to have to change the bobbin while you're in the middle of stitching the design. So I am putting a neutral white pre-wound bobbin here. I prefer pre-wound because I feel there's a little more thread on them, and it's easier for me because then I don't have to wind the bobbin. Now, if I was going to make freestanding lace, of course I would wind the bobbin so it would be the same color as the embroidery thread. So today we are using peel and stick stabilizer. And as you can see, this stabilizer is too narrow to use this hoop, but I want to use this hoop. And so what I did was mounted 2 pieces of this stabilizer in the hoop, scoring and making this area stick to the other piece. So we have a total connection with the stabilizer. I have pre-selected a design, and the design is going to stitch from the bottom here and the top here, so it's going to be sideways, and you need to remember this because as you're stitching it, the trick is to get the part of the bag on the top of the machine. So we're going to put our stabilizer in the hoop. When you're done stitching your bag, you want to remember to change your needle. Anytime you are stitching on something that is stiffer than fabric, you're going to want to change the needle. If this bag was bigger, I would pull out up the other side of the bag on top of the head of the machine. But because this bag is relatively small, I'm just going to pull this back, the other side of it back away from the embroidery position. The design I have chosen has 11 color changes, and so having a bag where you could pull it back out of the stitching field is actually going to be easier because then I'll be able to change the color of the thread. Okay, so we're going to start embroidering. Sometimes I might go through the pattern to see if the colors, if I could stitch more than one color at a time of the same color, you know, so that we're going to skip from 1 to 4, let's say. But in this case, I've never stitched this pattern, this embroidery pattern before, so I'm just going to start as if I've never stitched it, which I haven't. So we're going to go foot down, and we're just going to simply start embroidering. Now this is a score and stick embroidery stabilizer, which is great for anything that you can't actually get in the hoop. So we're going to change the color out to yellow, and I'm sure all of you have done this hundreds of times where you're changing out the color, but you'll be able to see that by having the top of the bag pulled out of the embroidery field, I can get my hand in there still to thread the machine. I have stitched bags where I have actually had the other side of the bag on the top of the machine, and I've had to come way over to the right and thread the machine. And when you go to thread the needle, you need to make sure that you're holding that bag out of the way, or it will interfere with the threader. And as any embroiderer will tell you, having the threader out of service can be a pain. And when you let it hit your finger, it won't work either. So we're going to do it, start it again. We're going down. Now on this one is going to be a little bit longer of a stitch. So we'll pause here, come back when the next stitch needs to go. Okay, now through the magic of videotaping, we're on the 11th thread in an 11 thread stitch out. 16,607 stitches. We're almost done. And I want to remind you that the first step in stitching a bag that you don't want to take on and off the hoop, or the hoop out of the machine, you actually want to change the bobbin first. It wouldn't hurt to start with a fresh needle, but you are going to want to change the needle after it stitches something as thick as a pleather bag. If you're worried about color selection, you can always do a test stitch out, and you don't have to go with the colors that the design tells you. Feel free to change colors, and if you're stitching something out and you decide that the color needs to be different, then just simply switch the color before you get to it. I always select my colors of thread before I start stitching, because there's nothing more frustrating than being in the middle of stitching a design out and then having to stop and say, oh, I forgot the pink. You know you're going to need pink, and so you should take the moment to actually get the colors you like. When you're stitching anything that you're holding the bag back, you can use a hair clip, you can use a clothespin. There's a number of things you want to use, but as anybody that's embroidered any length of time, you know that the minute you walk away from the machine is the minute that everything is going to go wrong. So, okay, our stitch out is complete. We're going to take the hoop off the machine. Of course, this will be the awkward stage when I catch the bulky bag on the foot. So we've got the stitch out, and we're simply going to rip it out of the stabilizer, tear the extra stabilizer off, and I would go in and actually tear it off in amongst the design. You're then going to turn it right side out again. And while I'm turning this right side out, I would just like to thank Bill and Katie, Cynthia's of Ben, for allowing me the opportunity to bring this video to you to show you how you can stitch a bag inside out. I'd also like to show you my stabilizer wall hanging. It's beautiful, but it also can hang over a door, or it can screw onto the wall or be on hooks on the wall. There is a lot of stabilizer, there's a lot of netting. It really holds anything that's round. I even have some contact paper in there. I love it. I was skeptical, but I love it. It doesn't sag. The weight doesn't seem to bother it a bit. So I feel that in this video, I have taken a clearance rack bag and turned it into a one-of-a-kind artwork. Thank you for viewing.